The mission of the LA Human Right to Housing Collective is to build a citywide tenants movement and create a network of resident-led organizations and committees that can build power to implement the principle of the human right to housing in Los Angeles' housing policies.
In late 2009, a group of local LA housing organizations came together to host the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the Right to Adequate Housing. After the successful collaborative work to inform the Special Rapporteur's report and recommendations, several organizations decided to continue working together to promote the fight for the human right to housing. This led to the creation of the Los Angeles Human Right to Housing Collective.
United Nations Day of Human Rights, but more than anything, we're here to commemorate the right to housing. And it's a commemoration that we're sad because the city, instead of before building a home, chooses to build a luxury multi-million-dollar building for the police to arrest the homeless, for the police to prosecute our youth who live in homes.
Can you hear me? I used to have my head way up my so-and-so.
Yo tenía mi cabeza adentro, ya saben
Until
dónde.
homelessness hit me.
Y la falta de casa me
And
golpeó.
that changed the game.
Y eso cambió el juego.
I like to fight anyway.
Me gusta pelear.
And when this happened to me, I realized that I will be fighting
Cuando
this
eso pasó a mí,
stuff
decidí
for
que
the
iba a
rest of
luchar
my
por el
life.
resto de mi vida.
Housing is a human right.
La casa es
Solo si estamos unidos,
Only when we are together,
vamos a poder luchar
we're
por
going to be able to
nuestros
fight for our
derechos
rights.
y por los de todas las personas
And for the rights of
que
everybody.
estamos siendo hostigados por nuestros
All
dueños.
the people who are being harassed by the landlords.
No será hasta la primera ni la última vez, ¿verdad que no?
Not the first, but the last time.
¿Qué queremos?
What do we want?
The collective's leadership committee has representatives from each member organization and geographic committees. It's a committee that is comprised of 80 low-income residents from the various communities and neighborhoods in which we work. This grows as our outreach, membership, and committees expand. This body decides the direction and issues that we address. The committee is comprised of public housing tenants, other low-income tenants, and homeless residents. Each representative on the leadership committee not only represents a geographic area, but is also active on an issue-specific committee. These issue-specific committees include our Public Housing Leadership Committee, our Rent Control Reform Committee, and our Foreclosure Takeovers Committee. Each committee meets a minimum of once a month, and our full leadership committee meets quarterly. Decisions are made by consensus.
Currently in the United States, the right to housing is being violated in many forms. First of all, the U.S. does not have a comprehensive housing strategy to deal with the lack of affordable housing. All they have done is defunded HUD every year since 1978-79. And now they are talking about privatizing public housing, which is housing of last resort. What the U.S. government wants to do is turn over housing of last resort for some of the lowest income residents in the United States and sell it over to corporations, banks that have already raided the U.S. people for billions of dollars. And now they want to give them this housing so that they can make more money off the backs of poor people in the United States. In LA City, 3 of the biggest housing developments are being are put at risk of being auctioned off as well, where another organization, not the government, is going to take over and is going to be able to implement new rules, regulations, new rents.
The way that our organization, that our coalition faces the structural inequities of Los Angeles through our organizing and through our leadership team is by facing those inequities head on. For example, Los Angeles is a diverse and multilingual, multicultural city. But for a person who is monolingual Spanish speaking or monolingual English speaking for that matter, it's very difficult to understand people surrounding you in your community, or to even be understood yourself. And so the way that we face that challenge is that we provide simultaneous translation during our meetings so that our members are able to speak and be understood in the moment. And likewise, people are able to understand their neighbors.
One of the great things about the collective is that the way that we work, all of the different organizations are all base-building organizations. So our members are people who live in the communities and are directly impacted by the housing issues we work on, whether it's rent control, public housing, Section 8. It's actual tenants who live in those conditions and are experts on the situation based on their experience. And because of this collaboration, our members are able to interact with public housing residents, Section 8 residents, rent control tenants from all across the city, and share their experience and compare and contrast what's going on in this neighborhood and what's going on in this neighborhood. How's it the same and how's it different? And that way we're actually getting a true citywide but still grassroots expertise around these issues. So what we're
One of the most recent victories of the LA Human Right to Housing Collective came in the fall of 2012 when the Housing Authority of the City of Los Angeles' Board of Commissioners voted unanimously to stand with the collective, declaring that the Housing Authority's staff had no compelling rationale to raise the rent on 414 public housing households for a fourth consecutive year. This marked the first time the Housing Collective was able to effectively freeze rents for public housing tenants or tenants in the city of Los Angeles, preventing tenants from receiving another 3% increase, which for some of them would have been up to $120. This victory came as a result of the organizing efforts of the collective's public housing committee and Section 8 residents.
I participate in the LA Right to Housing Collective because we don't live in a silo. We don't live in isolation. What happens in South LA happens in East LA and West LA, especially around housing. When you start talking about housing, it's just not about public housing. It's anybody who live in rent control units, anybody who live in subsidized housing, because there are a lot of subsidized housing in different pockets in the community. If you're living in a Section 8 unit, if you're living in a rent control unit, and if you're living in public housing development. That's the movement we're moving forward on, making sure nobody is homeless.
The Los Angeles Human Right to Housing Collective is doing what nobody else in Los Angeles is doing. It's building a citywide movement for housing rights across issue area, across geography, across race, across ethnicity, and we're building collaboration in a deep way. We're not building relationships amongst organization heads. We're not building relationships solely amongst community organizers. We're building collaborative relationships amongst neighbors, amongst community members, amongst staff, amongst other people who represent our communities. And we are going to change the way housing rights are seen in Los Angeles. We are going to demand more from our elected officials. We are going to ensure that the human right to housing is realized in Los Angeles, that homeless folks have a place to live, that people in rent-stabilized housing can maintain their housing in their neighborhoods, that our city and our country remains committed to public and subsidized housing as the backbone of the human right to housing. And we're going to do that through our collaboration, through our reach into diverse communities, and by really building a citywide movement.